Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, I want to talk to you about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I want to discuss how it affects military personnel and prisoners in very, very similar ways, and which one I feel is worse and more affected by it than the other. So, I don't have the experience personally as far as the military aspect goes. War veterans and such are the ones who typically suffer from this. Those that were actually in combat on the ground and saw and shed blood themselves. Oftentimes they lost a lot of friends. They were there when the casualties happened. It happened in front of them. Some of them were injured themselves. And I have had many discussions with guys like this. And I find that we have a lot in common with regard to how the past still tends to continually come up in the current time and always affects us for the rest of our lives in a negative way. It's something that unfortunately people can't just turn off and let go and move past. So with regard to the prisoners, obviously, I can speak from experience and I know how it affects them, not only with me, but as I've observed with a lot of people that I know. With prisoners, more so I would say it's when it happens to them at a very young age, it's oftentimes worse than later on in life. However, I'm going to say that PTSD, those that suffer from it, who are suffering as a result of being imprisoned, have it worse than the guys that have it as a result of war and combat. And I'll tell you some of the reasons why. First and foremost, the guys who were in the military, they volunteered. They had a choice to go and engage in whatever they wanted to do. They knew what was coming. They had an idea. They could have anticipated pretty reasonably what they were going to encounter in enlisting for the military service that they did. There is no draft. Nobody was forced to do it. Okay? Another point is, at all times, these guys had backup. They were really not left to fend for themselves for the most part. Of course, there are exceptions in combat where people found themselves in fucked up predicaments. But when you go to prison, when you go through that whole process, you're basically thrown to the wolves and you're completely alone. Nobody has your back. Nobody gives a fuck about you. Nobody will protect you. You don't have any weapons. Nothing. You're just on your own. So in that regard, I would say the prison is a lot worse also. Another point is that nobody ever in United States history engages in actual combat without having undergone serious training. They go through a lot of physical training and mental and emotional preparation before they're thrown into the war zone. They're not just picked up and plucked and put there. Whereas when you suffer PTSD from having gone through prison, it's a different story. You're just snatched up. Basically, you're kidnapped forcefully by government agencies, cops, FBI, CIA, whoever it is, and you're physically fucking taken, oftentimes physically beaten and tormented, and you're put in a fucking jungle. You're thrown there, and you don't know what the fuck the rules are. You don't know what the fuck you have to do in order to survive. You don't know what's expected of you. All you know is looking around that there are a bunch of fucking predators here, and I don't like the way these guys are looking at me. This is not going to go well. And unfortunately, you have to shed blood. You don't have the choice. Whereas, again, the military guys, they chose this. The guys in prison, some of you will argue, yeah, they chose it by their actions, but no one really knows what the fuck it actually is until they get there. You could think you know what the fuck jails and prisons are from having listened to thousands of stories like mine, or watched programs or videos, read dozens of books, but you will never fucking know the horror of it until you're actually there. When you start hearing these doors slam behind you and lock, and you look around and realize you're in a fucking completely different world. Okay? Another difference in the two is that when you're in the military, you're given a lot of support. You're told that you're a fucking hero. They paint this picture of you where you're a fucking savior and you're fighting for the rights of your country, and any bloodshed that you're responsible for makes you even more of a hero. You're doing it to save people. You know what I'm saying? So your actions there are justified. You murder somebody, it is murder. And it's justified. You're not going to be held accountable legally. You have nothing to fear. You know, you have weapons also. You're given these weapons in order to commit these acts and kill the enemy. Whereas when you go to prison, unfortunately, sometimes you have no choice but to defend yourself. Sometimes even to murder. Sometimes, you know, to do real bad things to people that you didn't want to do, but you had no choice. And you weren't given any weapon. You weren't given any training. No one's looking at you as a hero. No one's going to justify whatever blood you have on your hands. They don't give a fuck. It's the opposite. You're told that you're garbage. You're treated like you're garbage. And anything that happens in there, you're going to get more time for it. You're going to end up staying in prison for the rest of your life if you kill someone in a fight. Even if it's defending yourself, even if it's defending your own life. The opposite of what happens in the military. These guys who have these fucking, notches on their belt of people they've killed in combat, they come back home and they get awards and they get medals and they get special treatment and benefits from the government. The guy in prison, you know, again, I understand he's a bad guy. He broke the law to get there. I'm not comparing the two in that way. I'm just talking about the psychological damage that comes as a result. Technically, you know, the guy in prison, he just has to defend himself. It's worse for him. He has no backup. He has no weapons. He has no training. But his life could be on the line. Somebody could be trying to kill him. He has to defend himself. And what he does is terrible, according to society. Makes him even worse of a bad guy and a criminal and an oddball and blacklisted from society completely. So on the one hand, the guy gets the medals. On the other hand, you end up with a life sentence. You never come home. So it's very, very difficult for people to understand the damage that occurs psychologically, that stays with people as a result of these experiences. And I haven't even touched yet on the number one biggest difference between the two and why I say PTSD from prison is much, much worse than from war. Okay? And that is the way that you're treated. Okay, these guys who go to the military and enlist, and again, guys, I'm saying this with all respect to these military personnel. I may not agree with going to war and shedding blood and murdering other people for somebody else's fucking motives, money and power for the most part. I may not agree. But I'm not taking anything away from those that did it or are currently active military right now and the reasons that they're doing it. They just may not understand the true dynamics behind it, but that's not to take away their courageousness or, you know, their duty and what they're doing. So I'm grateful for those guys. Oftentimes, unfortunately, they misunderstand a lot and they don't really know what the fuck it really is, why they're there shedding blood and killing people until much later on in life when they gain experience and maturity and then can look back and realize that was fucking crazy and it was wrong. But that's a whole other video here, guys, so I'm not going to deviate too much from this point. So it's not to take away respect from them, guys. But what I was going to say was, these guys are treated well, okay? Aside from what they have to go through in physical training, which is good for them, you know, people are tough on them in that regard, they're treated well. They're treated humanely, with respect. At no point are they fucking treated like animals or beaten and intentionally humiliated and psychologically broken intentionally. Whereas in prison, that's what it's all about. That's the motive that I see that they have, administration has, especially with the hard cases. The harder you are, the tougher you are, the worse of reputation you have when you come in, the bad motherfuckers on the streets, those are the guys that the prison tries to break. The gang leaders, the ones that had influence, myself included in that. They tried to fucking break me. And the ways they break you are through humiliation and taking away your respect as a man, as an individual, as a human. They break you down slowly. And when that doesn't work, the last resort they have is they just put you in permanent isolation and lockup. And that's a whole other part of it also. You know, the military guys that suffer, they suffer as a result of what they had to witness and see and do. Okay? A lot of fucked up things happen in war. It's not a pretty thing. It's fucked up. That's what it is. But I think a lot of worse things happen in prison. And the fact that you're unprepared, untrained, completely on your own, you know, just makes it that much more worse. And when you factor in solitary confinement, for those that have to go through that part of it, that just takes the cake. That makes it just, you can't even compare the two anymore. It's one thing to fucking see murder. It's one thing to commit murder. It's one thing to be damaged as a result of fucked up memories of bloodshed and terrible things that happened to you. But it's a whole other thing to be taken and put in a fucking little closet and locked in there in a little cage like a dog and left there. The toughest of men will find out about their true selves under those circumstances much, much more so than in combat. When you have fucking machine guns and you got 50 other guys behind you, or even 5 other guys behind you watching your back, and you have the technology advantage over your enemy. It's a whole different thing, guys. And I'm not saying this again to try to take away from those people. This is just something I wanted to touch on. A lot of people aren't even aware that prisoners also suffer PTSD, and oftentimes it's similar in a lot of ways and a lot of the reasons as that of the military guys, the veterans. So again, guys, I hope this didn't come off in the wrong way. Please share your comments and feedback. I'm always interested. The bottom line is, you know, prison and jail cause a lot more damage, I think, than they do benefit to society. And for those that served in the military, I thank you guys always. I do not agree for almost all things with regard to war and murder and killing and whether it's justified or not. But I still have respect for the fact that you guys step up and do what the fuck you gotta do and take care of the country and protect our freedoms. All right? So thank you guys for listening to this video, and I'll talk to you next time.